that you don't have to pile high and deep, but it should be rich. The depth of knowledge should be greater. And that's what you want to do under your advanced. Your instruction, instructional activity. If you look at, there are differences. They might all be looking at writing sentences, but one may include a graphic organizer. It might be a persuasive essay. It's just different. My assessment might look different. And that's how you can. Does this take a lot of time? Yes. Can you do this for every lesson? No. So think about, as you're developing units, you have to develop units for your teacher work sample in order to graduate. So you might want to think now, how am I going to adapt and modify these things to meet the needs of students? This is my favorite, the learning contract, and you will have a sample in your packet that you can take with you and practice. You're having children that are having problems in the classroom. So, or you have children for whatever, if you're really going to be a differentiated classroom, you don't want it piecemeal. You want to do it consistently and regularly. So when you do this learning contract, you might say, my question or topic is. So remember when we're looking at the tic-tac-toe, we're looking at the tiered, and we're looking at the menu, each one of those, then if the students are going to have all this variety, then we probably need to target what they're going to do. So you create this learning contract, and it really works in a differentiated classroom. And you say, the student would write, my question or topic is, and then to find out about my question or topic, I will read, I will look and listen, I will write, and they actually have to write that down. I will draw, I will need. Here's how I will share what I know. I'm going to write a book report. I'm going to act out the character. But right there is where you, as the teacher, can see what they're doing. And if you do that, you have documentation of your differentiated classroom, the things that you're doing. And you can use that other one. This one doesn't look like what's in there, but you can use that. And the learning contract really works well. And you'll see other examples. This is another example. It's called another learning contract. To demonstrate what I have learned about photosynthesis, I want to, and then you write, I want to write a report, put on a demonstration, set up an experiment, develop a computer presentation, build a model, design a mural, write a song, make a movie, create a graphic organizer, and the list can go on. What might you add that's not up there? What else could you do? Don't say, you got them all down here. Come up with something. Something else is left. Can you put on a play? Yeah. All right, can you write a rap?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Oh, you were thinking that all along?
demonstration.
No, I thought they were going with demonstration.
Yeah.
Okay. So I captured them all, there's nothing else left? Okay. All right. So this will be a good way to demonstrate understanding of this concept because they actually have to write it out.
Wow.
Why they think that's a good idea to do that. So you get students that don't always take that road of least resistance. To do this project, I will need help with, and then you find out, this is a good time to involve parents so they know what's going on. Because we don't give enough information to parents. Trust me, I'm a parent. This is my husband right there. We're parents. So we have to figure out ways. The teachers don't always do a good job communicating all steps. And when you get it, sometimes the due date's not on it. And you got to rely on the child to tell you when it's due. But what's at the bottom of our little contract here? Parent signature. So they know this is what they're going to do. And if you have if you're creating a truly differentiated classroom, you want to communicate with parents what you're doing. And maybe you can involve parents in your differentiating classroom. But this is a great way. The criteria rubric which will be used to assess my final project is, my project will be completed by this date. And that gives them a really good idea of what is going on in the classroom. All right, number 5, pull out your sheet. What do you need to put on the 5th one if you haven't done it already? Have you all been writing?
Variety of curriculum approaches for
Oh, you read very well.
differentiated learning.
All right. So, do you already have, what's number 1?
Creative climate for learning.
And what's one thing you can do? Just shout it out.
Develop relationships.
Okay, smile. 2,
Know your students.
what's something you can do?
Assessment.
Multiple intelligence
Multiple.
assessment, your reinforcement survey that you have on the table. All right, what's number 3? Assess. What types of assessments do you need to do?
Yes or no card?
Cards.
Use cards, and what are those 3 ones? What might be the 3 types that we would do? Pre-assessment
During instruction, after lesson.
and after lesson. What's one example of a pre-assessment?
Yes or no?
Ask questions.
Squaring off,
Squaring
yes,
off.
no. What's something we can do during assessment?
Square.
Squaring off.
Squaring off is a
Thumb.
really good one, thumbs up. Okay, all right. And what's number 4?
Develop repertoire.
So what do you like so far of the strategies?
Think tactile.
You like think tactile? Okay, and then there will be an example in your packet. And now we're at create a variety of curriculum approaches for facilitating differentiated learning. And this is the last
I
one.
know.
Oh, yes,
In our classroom, we created a Venn diagram. I really like that.
perfect, yes, I love those, that would work. All right, now you might not see this very well, but it's in your packet also. And it's on page 4. And this is to help you see these different approaches of the difference between a traditional classroom and a differentiated instruction classroom. Because we've been talking about differentiated classrooms, but you might not be able to see the difference. If you look, I'm going to be focusing on the side you can see, the differentiated classroom side. But in a differentiated classroom, instruction is student-centered. You tell me, what does a traditional classroom look like? What does it say?
Instruction.
Is what?
Teacher-centered.
Teacher-centered.
Teachers.
All right, in a differentiated classroom, you have different grouping formats. You might have whole group, which you want to minimize a lot, small group for instruction. What happens in a traditional classroom?
That's the whole group
Oh,
setting.
It's a whole group, so you know that that's your only alternative. You're not operating from a differentiated classroom. Teachers employ flexible grouping practices based on student learning needs and interests. In a traditional classroom, what happens?
The groups are usually stacked.
Low, middle, high.
Based
teachers.
on-
Yeah, you just automatically put the kids in groups. They don't have a chance, they don't even have a choice.
Right.
Let's just get down. The teacher offers several assignment choices. What happens in a traditional classroom?
They're all assigned the same.
Everyone does the same, all right? Do we model that here?
No.
No,
No, we don't.
we don't model that here. But you're going to have to go into the classroom and differentiate instruction. You're going to have to do something you don't see. So right now, you're going to have to begin. Everyone has to do everybody has to do a teacher work sample. Everybody has to do an impact on student learning project. So we're not demonstrating that, but you've got, and that's the one issue about higher ed. So hopefully attending these workshops that the Teach Center puts on, thanks to Mrs. Farrar and her team of people, you get to see things that you can actually then put into practice, but you got to practice these things. So if you don't go out and practice, and when you're writing lessons and apply these things, it's not going to come through osmosis. It's not going to come naturally. These are things that you have to do regularly. You are going to have to figure out how to get your classroom on the right side, how to get your classroom there. You can look on the left, but I think it's just good for you to have a comparison. Okay, some of the things that we can do during while I'm right in the middle of instruction, and these are things that can happen during my instruction. It's called the Fist of 5. So students, right in the middle of teaching, you can hold up your hands. And again, once your students get familiar with this, you don't need the cards. You don't necessarily need this. But I love this Fist of 5. So you have your students hold up their hands. And 5 means I know it so well, I can explain it to anyone. 4, I can do it alone. 3, I need some help. 2, I could use more practice. Or 1, I'm only at the beginning. So let me see your hands of where you are now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How are you now? Because we're almost done. 4, 3. So what do I know as a teacher? That was my assessment while I'm in the middle of teaching. What do I know?
You still have some work to do.
We still have some work to do.
Yeah.
This is just the beginning level.
Right.
You have, college isn't designed where the professor just sprays the information and prays you get it. You also have to do something with the knowledge that you get. You need to go, you leave here, and while you're on spring break, you go online, you read a little bit about differentiated instruction, you go to the library, you go to Barnes & Noble and buy a book on differentiated instruction. If this is something that you want to develop your skill set, you can't depend on instructors to give you everything. You have to be intrinsically motivated to want to go to the next level. And you've got to apply this information on a regular basis. And I try to be a model of what it is that I want you to do. And so you're walking away with something that I want you to be able to actually use in a classroom setting. You can use it all the time, not necessarily, but it is a couple of tools. And as teachers, we have to have tools. We're like somebody, construction folks that may have a tool. Our toolbox, we just happen to work in a school. And your toolbox is in here, but you might have to start developing and keeping up with your toolbox. There's my toolbox right there. I came down with my toolbox, my cart, and all that stuff that I'm going to have to clean up afterwards are my tools. And so start developing your tools. So, can you use Fist to 5? Face the fact. On your table is a sheet that has a smiley face on it. And your children can make those in the classroom. They can actually, you can have them in the beginning, they can draw it on their paper. You can have cards that are already up. And you get a quick and dirty assessment of how they're feeling about what you're teaching. If you were teaching physics, and it's the first day, which face do you think the children will pick up? All right. And by the time you finish the lesson, what do you hope they'll be able to pick up?
At least they'll be straight.
Right, at least. But you see, teachers think, don't you think, I think I'm good, right?
Right.
But I don't know, I can think I'm good,
Right.
but I don't know I'm good unless the students say, they demonstrate that they got it, that they're excited, and they're running in the door to get to my class or something like that, So that's how otherwise we don't really, and some people don't really care. But I hope you're the compassionate, empathetic teachers that will care and will be concerned and want to know. Some people won't give a won't give a hoot about how students feel. But I know you all won't feel that way. So you'll want to come up with some of these things as why. And so in closing, the very last thing that we have is the application. So if you look on your table, there's a differentiation activity. And it says Sherry, Jimmy, Terrence, Jack, and Marie. And now, based on what I've gone through over the last couple of hours, each table will take a person. So if you all take Sherry, you all take Jimmy, and our folks that are still here, if you take Jack. It says differentiated activity in your little packet.
In the packet.
And it'll say the names of kids, Sherry, Jimmy, and Terrence.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
It'll say differentiated activity. It's like the next to last page.
What was our name?
You're Terrence. All right, so you're Sherry, Jimmy, and Terrence. And you are to reflect on your chart that you made, all this little pretty stuff you created. And what kind of how will you differentiate your classroom knowing you have a Sherry, Jimmy, and Terrence? You're going to apply what it is that we've talked about. And think about each one of those things. Just take a few minutes, read his scenario, and now how are you going to differentiate your instruction? Strategies. What are the strategies that you would now, how would you differentiate instruction to meet the needs of Sherry based on the information that you have?
So that was on the
Also the review, that going on like that. Subject matter talent, kids like that all the time. It's not in the beginning, but it's a certain years ago. Develop something through the school.
I think of women. Yeah, but you don't have. So you send us
That would be the first.
You can. That's fine.
Because we have to assess,
What are some things you came up with?
find out about you. I think that was important. Icebreaker. I think that's your first thing. You want to build that way in. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Oh, but before you find out what it is, you want to create a slide.
Yeah.
You want to, you eat lunch or
Or you buy it, you know.
but you got to do it too.
But
But the first, I mean, the first introduction would be you would want each student to introduce themselves. You know what I'm saying? If they can talk, certainly you want, that way you'll get to know all your students at once. Because you're going to introduce yourself to your students. That's cool, I can accept that. I have no problem with that. I'm thankful to be here.
So you all okay? You ready? You ready? All right. So your task was to imagine that you have 25 students in your class, and these are the 5 students that present the most challenges to you. And you have all of these students, and you've got to figure out, well, how am I going to differentiate instruction, knowing that these are most challenging students. So, what did the Sherry group come up with? Okay, so one of the assessments that you might do in the class, and why would you do that?
Well, she's not comprehending, she's reading, but she's not comprehending on what she's reading, so she's not taking the information in. So to see what she's learned, we would have her to put stuff on the board to see.
And it wouldn't necessarily just be her, but this is the thing that knowing that you have some students, that you would embed that in the class. And, okay, what else?
For Jimmy?
No, that was just one strategy, so you need another one. What was another strategy you came up with?
We also like squaring off for her.
Okay. Now, those are assessments. So what are the strategies that you would use?
That was we was using develop a repertoire.
Right. So what would be one of the strategies you might knowing that Sherry has a wild imagination and loves to read. One of the things you might do is look at your sheet that I gave you with the different learning styles and say, okay, I have a child that enjoys reading. She obviously likes, she speaks out, so we want to do something that requires that she would use her oral skills.
You said it.
And so that would benefit other students. But you'd want to make sure you have a variety, but we're just looking at what, if we were trying to figure out what to do, what we do with this student.
Yeah, we did say that she would put on a little skit.
Okay, all right. All right, the Jimmy group. How would you differentiate instruction if you were working with this particular, you had several students like Jimmy? What's going on with Jimmy?
The think-tac-toe, because the choices, he's hyperactive, he likes to dance. Also, he likes to read, so maybe giving him options
Okay.
and seeing what best suits him.
And so when you're developing those options, you want to make sure you had things in there that fit Sherry, Jimmy, Terrence, Jack, and Marie. And that would be a great way to do that, because you know you have students that like reading, so you want to make sure. Excellent. Okay. Anything else?
I guess maybe sign a contract to, maybe he likes to dance, which we don't want to really do unless it's constructive, so
Right.
maybe he could put on we could put on a play as a
Okay.
class.
And that might be one of our choices that we have. Okay, very good. And the Terrence group.
We thought that we should do a reinforcement survey with Terrence to figure out what his interests are.
Okay.
And we also wanted to do a learning style assessment to figure out if maybe the activities that have been offered to him in the past maybe just aren't quite his learning style.
Okay.
Maybe that's why he's not engaging like he should.
Okay.
And then based on the results of those two, we would develop a learning contract that gives him a choice of activities.
Okay.
And that way he knows, he's setting the date and he knows when he has to finish.
Very good. That's how your mind has to think with your students in the classroom when you're coming up with things. You can't just have business as usual. You have to strategically come up with ways, and you've got to look at the students that you have, and you have to make some decisions on, even though you're just looking at all your students, but these present the most challenges. Now, what about adapt? Nobody mentioned adapt. Could you use that? That was one of the things I was really looking for. That I want you to look at where your students are. You don't do this with everyone, so that should have been the key. And then use the adapt with your students. You want to figure out where are they directly having those problems, what are the prerequisites for that skill, directly teaching that skill, thinking I might need to change how I present that information to them. And you really want to pinpoint what it is they don't know and come up with ways to help them. So, tips for implementing differentiated instruction. You have to start slowly. You have to organize your classroom space. You have to start student files. You need to do a learning profile, reinforcement on all your students. You might want to start with student portfolios. You might have a clipboard. You've got to keep up with where your students are and what they're doing. You want to use technology as much as you can. These kids, young people are fascinated with technology, and it's got to be embedded in what you do. So hopefully your school, wherever you are, is working on becoming a school that really differentiates. You want to look for resources. Like I said earlier, this is like a stepping stone to the next level of coming up with those strategies, starting with just one or two, and eventually moving on to additional strategies. And finally, we have to have post-assessment. All right, so we have to have reflections after the learning. And so there were cards on your desk, but we picked them up now, so we'll just use them here. But I wanted you to look at the reflections afterwards. But we'll do them, and so everyone has to get up. We'll just do do it right here.
They're still on their.
Oh, they're on their table, okay. See if you see wraparound. Does anybody have wraparound on their table? You don't have it, okay. Just stand, let's come, we'll do it right here, because we have such a small number. You do have wraparound, all right? So, go ahead and, I'm gonna let you do it, because I really want the students to do it. So you can read it out loud. You can either read it from your card, or you can read it from here.
Wraparounds. 1, the participants form a circle. 2, each individual takes a turn telling A, something he will use from information or activities learned today, B, something he will remember from today, or C, a significant aha from this session.
All right, so you heard that. Come right here, and we're gonna make a circle. And we'll go through about 2 or 3 of the ones that are left. We're gonna form a big circle, and in your class, you might not be able to form a circle, but is this a way to get your students up?
Yes.
Yes, and they want to get up, trust me. They couldn't sit as long as you've been sitting, you've been wonderful, all right? So, you just take turns real quickly. Something you'll use from the information, something you'll remember, or an aha moment. We'll start with you, Richard.
I will use the, square off, is that what you're saying?
Yes, okay.
I would use the square off the yes or no card.